The FIA and Red Bull drama continues as reports come out suggesting that Johnny Herbert was removed from his steward position as a result of the Verstappens. Now, Damon Hill has also been discussing Red Bull as well, and it's very, very interesting to see what the two former Formula One drivers and pundits have had to say. Johnny Herbert spoke to casinoapps.com and he said certain people spoke to the FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayem, about sacking me. It didn't come from within the FIA initially. It was all to do with chitter chatter to the FIA that made them change their point of view. Reflecting on the decisions and the accusations of British bias, Herbert added, the Verstappens keep intimating there's a bias. Now, is there a bias from British pundits to British drivers? I personally don't think so. If you go through British coverage and the discussions around Abu Dhabi 2021, it's taken, 4 years for them to actually start discussing it in the proper light and the way that they should. And the thing is, do you want to know why? It's because the statute of limitations is coming to a close. It now seems that those people in the FIA, in Formula One in fact, who ignored it at the time and didn't want to say their piece, have all suddenly come out of the woodwork saying, it was so bad this, it was so bad that. Now, Damon Hill has gone on and had his own things to say. Now, it's been really interesting following Damon Hill over the course of the last few months since it was announced that he'd be leaving Sky Sports F1. And I do think that he has been removed from his position again because of Red Bull and because of Max Verstappen. Now, obviously, I'm not going to read through the entire article. I'll put it on screen for you now so that you can have a look at what Damon Hill has said in full. But Damon Hill basically said that Red Bull like to be looked at and thought of as those big kids on the block, the team bullies essentially. You'll know the kids that I'm on about, the one at school who thinks he's bigger and stronger than everybody else, who goes around knocking people about. That's what Red Bull like to think they are and like people to think of them as that. But those people, when it doesn't go their way, you see a true side to them. And that's what we see from Red Bull on a consistent basis. And it has never changed, and it has always been the same. Red Bull like to see themselves as big, hard and strong. But ultimately, they're fragile, they're insecure, and they can't do it without help. And the problem that we face as Formula One fans is that the FIA and certain drivers on the grid allow it to happen and allow Red Bull to be this toxic, insecure team, and we don't get to see teams that are run properly and respectfully. And the big thing that always annoys me and has annoyed me for the longest time is that if people race Max Verstappen how he races them, he cries on the radio, he begs for penalties, like he loses his head, he loses his marbles. We go back to Silverstone 2021. People say that Lewis intentionally crashed out Max Verstappen. I don't believe it was intentional. You can have your say down in the comments if you want to. But I believe that Lewis Hamilton went, you know what? I'm not being bullied anymore. I'm not being pushed off track. I'm not being forced into a position where I could go out of the race. I'm going to put you in that position. And what happened? Throughout the rest of that race, Red Bull were crying for him to be disqualified. We're crying for bigger penalties. We're crying about the way Hamilton celebrated a very, very important victory in that 2021 season. And you have Max Verstappen, who still complains about that Silverstone race. Now, a lot of people will look at it and go, well, why are Red Bull like this? And the answer is that Red Bull don't have the brand that a Mercedes, I don't even want to say Mercedes, that a Lewis Hamilton or a Ferrari or even a McLaren has. Red Bull are a big name in their own right, for a completely different thing, whereas your Mercedes, your Ferrari, your McLaren, even your Williams are bigger teams and will always be bigger teams than Red Bull, no matter what Red Bull do, because Red Bull will always be a drink company. And they will always have titles that have got question marks over. You even go back to some of Sebastian Vettel's world titles and the question marks that were raised about legality around that period. And people are then going to say, well, let's talk about Lewis Hamilton and I think it's the 2008 championship relating to Ferrari IP and Spygate and things like that. And do I think that those titles have an asterisk over the 2008 one? Personally, no. The main reason why is because the car was checked regularly. There was a $100 million fine for McLaren, which they're only just starting to recover from. And there was no Ferrari IP ever found on that car. Now, I always think that you have to take the rough with the smooth. And is there bias in some places? Maybe. Did Lando Norris, being the driver Max Verstappen was up against, mean that Max Verstappen got that 20-second penalty in Mexico? No. I think the 20-second penalty was deserved, and the stewards need to be harsher with every driver on the grid, not just Verstappen. But there also needs to be a change. We can't have one team getting all the benefits and all the luxuries, whereas other teams are sort of pummeled and punched and kicked while they're on the ground. And this is the problem that I continue to see in Formula One, is that we lose important people, knowledgeable people like Damon Hill, like Johnny Herbert, because of their views regarding, say, Max Verstappen, say, Red Bull, Abu Dhabi 21. And for me, it's not right that those people aren't allowed to say what they think. Max Verstappen can do all he wants. But at the minute someone says something about Red Bull, it's game over. And that is a problem, in my opinion. Now, I believe that the FIA and Red Bull have something going on behind the scenes. I've thought it since probably around 2020, because that rule change going into 2021 was one of the most targeted rule changes we have ever seen in the sport. And if you look at the rule changes before then, everything was with the intention of dethroning Mercedes, which is fair enough. Try and drag back the competition, that's okay. But my problem is that hasn't been consistent since 2021. There was no changes made in 22 in regards to performance, really. There was conversations around flexi floors. There was a TD brought in, which was to stop the bouncing, which meant the floor flex had to change. But that wasn't to take performance away from Red Bull. It was to stop bouncing, and people need to understand that. Then going into 2023, again, no real rule changes. And then you have the flexi wing drama again, which we had all season last year. And in my opinion, I still believe that Red Bull had the fastest package over the year. They still should have won the title. They didn't, because Sergio Perez was ass. That is it. But McLaren won that title. Theirs. Max Verstappen won the drivers after about 10 races. I'll still hold true to that. But it comes now into the 2025 season, where we've not really had changes. Flexi wings were supposed to be okay, but then all of a sudden, flexi wings aren't okay. I'm pretty sure there's been some protests lodged about rear wings already for this season after testing, which I don't actually mind, because there is a lot of teams who, if you watch the onboard footage of the camera facing the rear wing, it dips, it pulls up, and that. Yes, there's certain amounts of load in the car where ride heights change, but the way it's sort of the flap is dipping and opening and stuff like that, it's not quite right. And I'll go back to the mini DRS of McLaren for that. But will the FIA solve their problem with Max Verstappen haters? Will Formula One finally have a new face? I personally don't think so. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you in my next video.